Well, hello everyone. Thanks for attending and joining me for today's Empowering Mobile Users webinar, where we're going to demonstrate the possibilities of quickly building and deploying custom apps to your users' mobile workplace. Now, quick disclaimer, this webinar is focused on those of you who are new to the FileMaker platform. So when we dive into the demo portion, we're going to scale that appropriately. That said, we will be using some techniques and methodologies that may fall under the beginner advanced category. So we'll be working under the assumption that you've walked through the FileMaker Custom App Academy tutorials at minimum. Either way, you'll get a recording of this session at the end of this webinar, so you can view it at a later time and follow along at your own pace. Now, before we get started, let's spend the next minute or two on some brief housekeeping notes, and then I'm going to follow that up with another 2 to 3 minutes just discussing the mobile landscape. So for the best experience, it is strongly recommended that you participate in this webinar with at least a broadband connection. And if you run into any problems or you require online assistance at any time, please contact Citrix Technical Support at 888-259-8414. And throughout today's presentation, you're going to have the opportunity to type in and ask questions. So let's talk briefly about how to do that. Just go to the control panel, click on that question section, enter your question, and then click on send. And we'll try to answer as many as time allows at the end of our presentation, but remember, you don't need to wait until then to submit a question. Now, you may already be familiar with this graphic, but Gartner recently posted a list of current and estimated worldwide device shipments, and the market is absolutely dominated by mobile devices. And that's really no surprise. It's the way that it's been as mobile devices have rode a massive wave of interest while PCs have flatlined a bit. Now, taking it a step further, Statista, a statistics portal pulling from over 22,000 sources, they estimate smartphone owners at over 4.6 billion and climbing. 4.6 billion, that's over half of the world's population, and we're not even counting in tablet users. Now, I don't have to use any graphics or statistics to convey the level of integration of mobile devices into our daily lives. Everyone here is well aware of that. We all use them to connect to each other via social media. We use these devices to manage finances or health through downloadable apps. We use it to stay up to date on current events. The key takeaway is there's a real dependency on mobile devices. There's now such a baseline of expectations that this convenience of information has ultimately bled into our jobs. I mean, has anyone attending today ever used his or her quote unquote personal phone to set up or accept a client meeting on a calendar app? Has anyone attending today ever used their personal phone to check emails or text to respond to clients or coworkers? I mean, I definitely checked my work email on my phone before heading out the door to do this webinar. Now, given the state of this mobile integration and these daily behaviors, I find it fascinating then that in FileMaker's hundreds of weekly conversations with both new and existing customers, that many of them, maybe like many of you attending today, were strictly focused on the idea of the problem in the app or maintaining status quo on an existing app, without a wider consideration for accessibility of the solution and thus maybe even a more efficient solution to the problem, right? Now, certainly focusing on the process and leveraging a custom built app to address the broken process, that's a large piece of the puzzle. You don't need to look any further than FileMaker's State of the Custom App report to validate that. There's absolutely an advantage to deploying a custom app where you control how interactions are handled and you control what features you do or don't need on the fly. There's definitely an advantage to deploy a flexible solution that can reach that 10% of your business that your larger ironclad software can't reach. But again, just having a good custom app and strictly focusing on what that app is going to look like and how it's going to function, that's only one major piece of the puzzle, because if we're not thinking strategically about deployment, then we're limiting the adoption of our custom apps as well as the maximum work potential you can achieve. Ultimately, those devices in those 4.6 billion users' hands, they dictate that work isn't just limited to that row of cubicles lined in the office. Your work is your clients' homes where you perform inspections or you perform surveys. It's up and down aisles in the warehouse. It's a field where you're gathering research. it's at a coffee shop where you're reviewing a report. And one of the best capabilities of the FileMaker platform is that if you already have a FileMaker custom app strictly deployed on the desktop, or if you're considering the FileMaker platform and you're wondering how difficult is it to get that custom app into the hands of your mobile users, well, it's extremely easy to do so without having to recode any work to iOS or the web. FileMaker does all of that heavy lifting for you on the back end, so your custom apps, they just open up and they work. So you build your custom maps in FileMaker Pro Advanced, and then you have two options to host them. Key takeaway here is that FileMaker now offers a cloud option through Amazon Web Services, which pairs well with mobile deployments. And then to connect to these custom apps, you access them through the desktop. And again, FileMaker will automatically open your custom apps in FileMaker Go, which is our app for iOS, or WebDirect, which is our web browser technology for both phones and tablets. So there's a lot of flexibility to extend your solution past the desktop, regardless if your users are in or out of the office. And here are some fantastic examples of how FileMaker enthusiasts are already doing this. So every day, Tasty Fresh food code drivers visit over 7,400 locations and deliver around 28,000 lunches to workers at office parks and industrial zones in major cities on the east and west coast of Australia. They created a custom iOS app that integrates with both Google Maps and Apple Maps to manage precise driver routes, ensuring on-time delivery, especially for drivers picking up routes from coworkers calling in sick. Their app is used across 62 mobile devices and expanded to manage inventory, customer feedback and complaints, as well as reporting, and all of that adding up to an estimated 500,000 savings annually. Yoho Brewing Company, they ship more than 10,000 barrels every month. Now, previously, as the company was growing, they encountered a major problem. The information in their spreadsheets showed that the number of barrels being shipped out didn't match the number of barrels being returned. So stale reporting and errors meant delivery teams never knew how many barrels should be at any restaurant, and there was no way to know what they were looking for. They leveraged the FileMaker platform to automatically create labels when orders came in, which were then attached to barrels and scanned and managed on an iPad, virtually eliminating barrel losses and saving them thousands of dollars a month. The UK Top 40 hits are frequently either recorded, mixed, mastered, or creatively treated in Metropolis Studios in West London. Now, the FileMaker platform, it was used to manage financials and invoices, but then they extended their custom app to include WebDirect web browser access in a bring-your-own-device type of environment. So now clients are able to quickly open a web browser on the phone or the tablet that they naturally bring with them, and then they can review an audio or a video clip to make real-time comments for a faster, smarter, and more agile system. So these are three very different use cases, but three of just the many fantastic examples in FileMaker's over 30 years history of how businesses leverage the benefits of a custom, uniquely designed app paired with a smart strategic mobile deployment. All right. So by now, I know some of you are already thinking, great, Ryan, there's a lot of mobile devices in the world and FileMaker has customers, groundbreaking stuff. I want to see this in action. Well, I hear you. So let's shift our focus and see what we can come up with in the next 30 or 40 minutes or so. So we're going to build a demo around an auto parts reseller that wastes time creating quotes and tracking inventory on spreadsheets. So when they're at their trade shows, which is frequent, it's just a huge time suck having to write down orders, re-enter them into a database back in the office, and then having to circle back and fix any errors that were made during the re-entry process. I'm sure this sounds familiar to a lot of you attending today. Now, some of you may also be thinking, excuse me, Ryan, I don't run an auto parts shop. And don't worry, even though the use case is different, we're going to be covering methodologies and techniques that apply to all FileMaker solutions. Now, when I'm talking about empowering my mobile users, I'm talking about a few things. First, some of you may be a Mac shop, a Windows shop, or maybe you have a bring your own device policy. Well, I know that at this FileMaker Auto Shop, we have a stack of iPads we purchased, but haven't found the right business use case for. There are also some remote workers that maybe need access via the web. So given that, I want to make sure that I can provide easy access to the devices that my users actually want access to and will use. Also, I want to make sure that I create a custom map that's not only easy to use, but solves real business problems more efficiently. So after gathering some feedback with my team, I'm going to focus on providing an easy way to build quotes, as well as send out copies of those quotes to the customers directly from this app. Now, that's a lot to do with the time we have left. So let's go ahead and we'll focus on our first goal of providing real-time access across devices. Okay, so I'm going to open up my FileMaker Pro Advanced, and there's a lot of different ways to get started when you are building your custom app. You can start with one of these starter apps. We have sample apps, which can also be used for inspiration, but they're great springboards to getting you going along your custom app. You can also work with a FileMaker developer. In this scenario, what we're going to do is we're going to build a custom app from scratch. So I'm going to select blank. I'm going to go ahead and create that, and we'll give it a name. We're just going to call it Quotes Tool. All right, we'll save that. And now we're taken to a little bit of a peek underneath the hood of this FileMaker custom app. So we're given a brand new table. It's taking the name of the file that I just created. So I'm just going to go ahead and shorten that to quotes. All right, and we're also given a few fields that were populated when we created this table automatically. Right, so there's some fields here like the primary key, so that when you create a brand new record, there's a unique identifier here already. We'll capture who created that record, as well as when that record was created, as well as who's the last person to modify that record and when was that modified. So these are here automatically. Because sometimes new developers or even experienced developers, they don't think to add these particular types of fields, even though these are fields that you would probably want in all of your tables until it's far too late in the process. So again, FileMaker will automatically have these in place here for you. I also want to create a new field. I'm going to call this invoice. On top of having a unique identifier for every record, I also want to keep track of the invoices that I have in my custom app. So I'm going to change that from a text type to a number. So we'll go ahead and create that field. And then in the field options, in the auto enter tab, I'm going to select the serial number option. And this just ensures that anytime I create a brand new record, the value will increment by 1. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK on that. So we'll click OK. We're now in what we call browse mode, and I'm going to go ahead and go one layer deeper into what we call layout mode. And this is where you can design the look and feel or the interface of your custom app. And I'm going to create a brand new layout, and layout, they're just views of information, okay, or views of the tables of information that you have in your custom app. So I want to say, this will be based off the quotes table, and we'll just call this quotes details. All right, and then we can choose different templates. Is it going to be built for a desktop, iOS devices? Maybe you want a template for labels or reports. But remember, in this use case, we have that stack of iPads, and we're going to be building out a custom app for the iPad, which we'll then distribute to our field team. So I'm going to choose iPad template, okay, and I'll choose to build this out in landscape mode. All right, so we have a blank slate here. Again, we can design the look and feel however we want. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a title on this layout, okay? So I'm going to add some literal text onto my layout here. Let's call this quotes here. Maybe I want to make that just a little bit bigger. So I'm going to change the font size to 24 points here, and the color is fine here. We can change some color schemes of this header as well. The black is just a little bit too dark for me, so maybe I want to go with something like more of a charcoal gray here. Okay. And again, these are the same steps that you would take as you build and design your custom app. Now we probably want to add some information onto our layouts. And again, in FileMaker, the information is stored in those fields that we talked about. I do have that created by field. I'd love to have that on my layout so I can make sure who is creating this record or who's creating the quote for my company. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to drag that created by field and place it right onto my layout just like that. Now we could continue building this out, but before we get that far, I want to just verify, can I actually get this onto an iPad easily? Can I get this into a web browser easily? Because if I can't, then I don't want to spend all these development cycles and just kind of waste some time. So what I'm going to do is, let's exit this layout here. All right, and we're going to go ahead and host our custom app with FileMaker Server. Now, there's one thing I want to do here. I just want to go ahead and peek under the hood in terms of the security. Okay, so here, this is where I can create accounts. I can create as many accounts as I want, and I can also create privilege sets, or what can you do in the custom app once you've logged in. And you can create your own custom privilege sets as well. But in this scenario, we're just going to stay logged in with the admin account, and I'm going to go ahead and provide a password to this admin account. Now, why am I doing this? Is because when I host this file, the FileMaker server, it wants an account with a password attached to it in order for me to host the file. Just a security measure that it has. So we have that prepared. I'm going to upload this to FileMaker server. It's going to close that out. Here is my FileMaker server. I'm going to enter credentials here for that. We'll give it a minute to upload. All right. All right, the file was uploaded successfully. Let's go ahead and relog into that file. And there we go. Now, it kind of looks like what we were just looking at on our screen, but you can see at the top, it's giving us an indication that we're actually accessing a hosted file now. All right, so great start, but how do we get this over onto an iPad? That's a great question, and in order to do that, what I'm going to do is bring over my QuickTime video. Okay, so I have my iPad Air attached to my QuickTime. You can see that right here on my screen. And down at the bottom right, I'm going to go ahead and tap on that green FileMaker Go icon. So let's go ahead and tap on that. And here's FileMaker Go. You can see there's three icons down at the bottom. Currently highlighted is device, and this is a really important feature for your mobile users. And why is it important? You can store a local copy of your FileMaker custom app directly on this device. So if they're in an area with a bad network connection or no network connection at all, they can open up the local copy, they can make changes, add records, and then when they do have a network connection, they can push those changes to the hosted file. On the right down at the bottom, if I tap on the hosts icon, this is just where I can access FileMaker server hosted databases, regardless if they're local to me or if they are external. Down at the bottom, that second database from the bottom, you'll see the quotes tool. That's the tool that we created. So I'm going to go ahead and tap on that. Again, we're going to log in our credentials here. And go ahead and click go. And just like that, there is our file. We can even use some gestures to hide some of these menus to make it even look more like a native app, and you can automate that with a script if you want. Now, if we take a look at back in FileMaker Pro Advanced, let's make some changes to this layout, okay? So let's go back into layout mode. Again, this is where we edit the design and look and feel. Remember, we created that invoice ID. I'd love to have this invoice ID field on my layout. So again, just like we learned, we're just going to drag and drop that onto the layout. All right, there's the invoice ID. All right, now before I save this layout, let's jump back over to our FileMaker Go and keep your eye out on the bottom area of the FileMaker Go there. All right, so we'll go ahead and save that layout. And just like that, the ID field is represented on the iPad layout. That easy, all right? We also wanted to verify, can we get this over into a web browser? So again, so let's minimize my FileMaker Go, all right? And I'm going to jump back into this security area, all right, in FileMaker Pro. And in order to enable the web, I have FileMaker Server installed, and in FileMaker Server, I have my web publishing enabled, the FileMaker WebDirect technology is enabled. But within the FileMaker custom app itself, there is one step I need to perform, and that's to provide access to accounts via this WebDirect technology. So in this extended privileges area, I'm saying that for the WebDirect technology, I'm going to allow access to any account that has a full access privilege set. And again, your file, you can determine who can access the different technologies, but in this scenario, we'll just stick with the admin account full access that I'm currently logged in with, okay? So we've enabled that. Now let's open up a web browser. I'm going to jump to the FileMaker WebDirect landing page for my FileMaker server. Over here on the right-hand side, you'll see that quotes tool that we created. So let's go ahead and open that up. And we'll log in with our credentials again. And there it is, just like we expected. Not having to be a web developer and use HTML or CSS. It just worked. There's that invoice ID field that we just added to our layout. And just like that invoice ID field, let's just jump back into FileMaker Pro and make one more change and see this development in action. There is a logo that I have for the FileMaker Custom Auto Parts. I'd love to have that on my layout. So let me minimize this web browser really quick. Okay, we'll drag this onto our layout here, just like that. Again, we'll bring up our web browser here. And I'm going to go ahead and save this layout. Keep your eye on the right-hand side in the web browser. And there it is, automatically appears in the web, just like on the desktop. What about FileMaker Go? There it is, just like we expected. And again, these are just layout changes. We're going to make some data changes as well as we move forward with our custom app demo. But the key takeaway here is that, again, we're able to prove real-time access across multiple devices. That's really going to help cut down on the time wasted on double entry and free up more time to focus on other productive areas of our business. All right, so now we can start focusing on building out the actual custom app itself. So we're going to create a view of the inventory list, and we'll create a method for building a quote using layouts, tables, fields, relationships, and portals. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we'll do that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize this FileMaker Go, and I'm going to jump out of this quotes tool. And I'm going to open up my FileMaker server. There's another quotes tool file here that I have just to save some time, quote tool B. So let's go ahead and open that up. There it is. Okay, so in the interest of time, what I've done is just some minor changes, view some steps that we've already learned how to do. What I've done is just created some additional fields to capture customer information, just a bunch of text fields, and place them onto our layout, drag and drop them onto our layout just like we learned. Added some literal text here to name this section here, just like we did with our quotes title. And then I just did some quick formatting for the created by and the invoice field. All right, so current workflow of the trade shows is that they have a spreadsheet of inventory items. It's turned into a brochure that they hand out. Sometimes they'll hand out the spreadsheet as well to customers who come and visit the booth. Now, it would be great if we could turn this spreadsheet into a view on my layout. There isn't that much real estate that we could have here. Maybe we could carve out a section here to have an inventory list, but I really want to kind of reserve the space here for the quote that we're going to be building out. So maybe we'll create its own view, maybe use something like a card window to call up this inventory list. But the first thing I need to do before we kind of get travel down that path is get all of this inventory list information into my custom app. So what I'm going to do is we'll import that spreadsheet right into my FileMaker custom app. All right, so file import, select an inventory list. Now, it doesn't make sense to import the inventory list data into this quotes table. So I'm going to tell FileMaker, go ahead and create a brand new inventory list table. All right, so import that. And there we go. We have the inventory list, 25 records there. I just switched over into what we call table view, which is similar to like a spreadsheet-like view. I also have a folder of the images for the different inventory items. I'd love to have all of that stored in the FileMaker database as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead again, create a brand new field, and we'll just call this image. I'm going to change the field type from text, which is default, to container, and container fields store media files. So images, sound files, movie files, document files, all of that is stored in a container field. And here you can see me dragging and dropping some images over onto my inventory list. Now you may be thinking, okay, 25 images, not that big of a deal to have to drag and drop, but does that mean I have to drag and drop everything? What if I'm working with 100 or 200 or 1,000 images? No, you don't have to drag and drop manually. You can actually drop all those images in a folder like we have right here, and you can import that folder directly into your FileMaker custom app. Now, to save some time, we'll just keep the images here at up to the electric car battery, but you guys get the idea of how that all works. All right. So we're already beginning to combine this information into one centralized location. We have images together with the inventory list. We have the quotes, or the foundation of a quote starting up. But now how do we get this information over onto our quotes layout? Well, when you want to show information from one table tied to a layout from a second table, the first thing you need to do is create a relationship between those two tables. So we're going to go back under the hood, kind of where we started. So File Manage Database, again, this is where I can see my tables, my fields associated with those tables, and then the power of FileMaker, the relationships between those tables. Now I want to create a relationship between, again, those inventory items and the quotes. And creating a relationship is as simple as finding fields with common values and just dragging and dropping those fields together in this view. In this scenario that we have right now, there aren't really any fields that kind of match. For example, we have a unique identifier in the quotes, and if we created a relationship to the unique identifier in the inventory list workflow would break. What I mean by that is, let's say that the primary key value is 1. Well, any record in the inventory list that has a value of 1 would be displayed on the first record, and that's it. We couldn't do anything else. If the second record in the quotes table had a primary key value of 2, I could only see the second record in the inventory list, right? So that's not necessarily the best approach for trying to get a list encompassing all of my inventory items, and that's okay. Having this equals type of relationship is probably, again, not the best approach. What I'm going to do is just double click on that. I'm going to change that from an equal sign to this X. It's a Cartesian relationship. What I'm telling FileMaker is that regardless of the value in the primary key field or the value in the primary key field for the inventory list, I want you to share all of those records. So the first quote, regardless of the primary key is, show me all of the inventory list items. The second record in the quotes, regardless of what that value is, show me all of the inventory list items. So let's go ahead and see that in action. Okay, so we have our relationship set. Again, we probably don't have enough real estate here. We could try to force fit it, but I want to use a card window that will automatically pop up whenever I call it to view the inventory list. So we're going to jump back into layout mode, okay? And again, we're going to create a brand new layout, pulling from the quotes table, and we'll call this inventory card, okay? We'll choose, we'll just do a touch device, iPad form, portrait, that's fine. We'll go ahead and click on finish. And now what I'm going to do is just resize this layout a bit. I don't need this bottom navigation here, but let's go ahead and change this up. All right, there we go. Let's change this color here as well. I'm going to make this a little bit lighter to kind of match our current custom app. All right, so this is just another view into the quotes inventory. The quotes table. So now I'm going to use a tool called a portal tool, and a portal is just a view into to the records of a related table. So I'm telling FileMaker, go ahead and show me all of the records that are related in the inventory list table. Okay, I'm going to say when scrolling, say number of rows. I'm just going to say 4. Click OK. Now, what information do I want to pull over? Well, I want to bring over the image, item, cost, description, and inventory ID. We want to bring all of them over, okay? All right. Now let's just do some quick adjustments on the look of the portal here, okay? Again, this is same type of movements you'd use as you design your layouts, just aligning the fields wherever it makes sense, changing colors, all the type of techniques that you would have in your file. I want to do one other thing here to my particular cost field. I'm going to change that to a currency, okay? 1000 separator, fixed number, there we go. All right, now let's see what happens when I exit the layout and jump into browse mode, okay? You can see all of the inventory list items listed here, okay? Just like we expected. All right. And right now, again, we're in the quotes table. We have 5 records in the quotes table. And as we scroll through, it doesn't matter because based off that relationship, again, we were saying that I want to view all of the records in the inventory list ID, regardless if these keys match or not. So again, perfect for what we're trying to achieve as an all-encompassing list. Now, that's step 1. How do we get this over onto the quotes layout? So what I'm going to do is, again, jump back into layout mode, all right? And I'm going to use this button navigation tool that I have, okay? So I'm going to just draw that onto my layout, all right? And with the button navigation, I can choose some icons, I can choose some text with icons, and I can do things like, for example, let's say that for this first button, I want to tell FileMaker, go ahead and create a new record. Okay, so this will be an easy way for me to create a new quote in my tool. On the third button, maybe I want to say, go ahead and close the file. Okay, again, just another easy way to manipulate my custom app. And then for the middle, again, we want to show that that inventory list. So let's find a icon that works. Here, we'll go ahead and use this one here. And we'll tell FileMaker, go ahead and when I click on that button, open up a brand new window, okay? That window is going to be a card style, okay? So it's going to be a modal window that appears right on my screen. And I want that window to display the brand new inventory card layout that I just created, okay? So I'm going to say, go ahead and click OK. Click OK there. All right. Now, when I exit that layout and take a look at what happens, I click on that button. There we go. The inventory list appears just like we want. Really simple and easy way for us to review the inventory right in this custom map without having to constantly look at a spreadsheet or a brochure that we have at our trade show table. And if we look at what this looks like over in our FileMaker Go, let's open up that quote tool B that we were working in. Okay. And we'll log in there. All right, so if we tap on that button that we created, there it is. just like we expected. We're making some really great grounds in our FileMaker custom app. All right, so we have the list there, okay? Now what we'd like to do next, now that we have our list that we can view for the inventory, we want to start building out our quote, okay? So we can view this list right within the tool. Then we want to be able to take these items and build out a quote. All right. So again, when we have information that we want to display on a second information, right? When we want to build out inventory items and display them on my quote, the first thing we need to do is, again, build a relationship between those tables. All right. So we're going to, again, go back under the hood. All right. We're over into our relationships table, okay, or our relationships graph. We have the inventory table. It already has a relationship to our quotes table, but that's okay. You can make multiple instances of the same inventory table. So I can tell FileMaker, you know what? I want to display information from the inventory table in a different way, okay? So without duplicating information, I'm just going to say, go ahead and create a brand new instance. I'm just going to call this orders inventory, okay, so it stands out a little bit more. All right. Now, in this scenario, if we think about the relationships, we again would run into the same obstacle that we talked about. If I want to build a quote based off of these primary keys, I would be limiting myself in terms of the amount of inventory records I can associate with a quote record, right? So this essentially one-to-one type of relationship isn't going to work. So what we actually are going to need to take advantage of is another technique called a many-to-many relationship. And again, you may have become familiar with this idea in the FileMaker Custom App Academy. What we're talking about with a many-to-many relationship is that the records in an inventory table, one record in the inventory table, it may be associated to many quotes. And one quote will be associated with many records in the inventory table. And when you create a many-to-many relationship, you actually need a third table in the middle called a join table. And we'll see how that works. So first thing I'm going to do is create my join, and I'm just going to call this quote items. All right, so we'll create that. By default, in the quote items, you can see that we have those 5 fields like we expect. I'm going to create a brand new field called foreign key quote. This is going to complete my relationship to the quotes table. And I'll do the same thing for inventory. And this will allow me to create a relationship to the inventory table. All right. Now let's jump back into our relationships graph. All right. We'll place the quote items table in the middle. And then we'll create our relationship here. So the primary key from the quotes to the foreign key quote, and then the foreign key inventory to the inventory. All right. So what this does, or what it allows, is I can create a record in this quote items table that's associated with a particular quote. And that record in this quotes item table can also be associated with a particular inventory item. So this quote items table, you can kind of think of it as the line items in a quote, right? Where you'll have multiple inventory items displayed for a quote in those line items. That's kind of like the records in this quote items table, right? So you could say, let's say 5 records in this quote items table, they all share the same quote ID, but each of those 5 records will be related to a different inventory item. So that's a group of records representing a particular quote. Meanwhile, the records in the inventory table and the records in the quotes table all remain unique. Now, there are some additional fields I want to add in this quote items table. Okay, so I do want to capture, again, if we're thinking of it as the line items in our quote, I do want to be able to capture the quantity, all right, and that'll be a number field. And then I want to capture the subtotal for that line item as well. And this is going to be a calculation type of field. Okay, so we'll create that. We're going to get prompted to specify that calculation. And we're just telling FileMaker I want to capture quantity times the cost. All right. And then finally, we'll have the complete total of the quote, and this will be a summary type of field, and we'll say a total of the subtotal value. So we'll go ahead and click OK there. All right. All right, so we've set up our relationship. We have the appropriate fields that we want underneath the quote items table. So let's go ahead and click OK. Now, how do we get these related records onto our table? Again, back into layout mode, we're going to use the portal tool. Okay, so we're going to draw the portal tool here. All right, and we're going to say that we want to pull information from the quote items table. All right, and we'll allow vertical scrolling. Now, what records or what fields do we want to show? Well, from the orders inventory, let's say we want to display the item, the cost, then we'll say the quantity and the subtotal. All right, so we'll click OK there. And we'll do a little bit of formatting on this subtotal and this cost field so that we change that to a currency with a 1,000 separator and fixed number of decibels there. All right. And let's go ahead and take a look. Oh, actually, there's one other field I want to add here. We want to add the primary key. Let's duplicate this here. We want to add the foreign key for the inventory. This is going to help us create a relationship to the inventory item that we want to select. Okay. Now there's one other piece that we want to configure, and that's in the relationships. We want to be able to create records via this relationship, okay? And what that does is, since I have a portal from the quote items table that's sitting on my quotes layout, I'll now be able to add records directly within that portal, okay? Now, why is that a benefit? Well, I can go ahead and bring up my inventory list, and I can say, okay, I'm talking to a customer. He's interested in car batteries. That ID is 3. So let me close that out. And I'm going to go ahead and add an item here. So we have a car battery. We'll say that he wants 10 of these. And we have a subtotal for $800. Same thing here. We have a car engine. Here, disc brakes. Okay, so he wants disc brakes. That's a inventory item number 5. Okay, so we'll click that. We'll say he wants 15 of these for his store, and that'll cost him $4,200. All right. Now we also created one additional field called total. So let's jump back into layout mode. Okay, and let's bring that total field over onto our layout. Let's bring that over here like this. Okay, and again, some quick formatting on this just to turn that into a currency. 1,000 separator, fixed number of decibels. There we go. And we can see that the total automatically adds up those values. And again, if we create a new quote, here we'll say this guy air filter is 1. This guy wants 30 of these for his store. You can see that the again, total will dynamically change, and this is completely separate from our original quote. You can see the invoice here has a new number as well. All right, so a really great start building out the inventory list view and a quote builder. So this is already eliminating some of the manual processes, bogging down our workflows, but we can take it a step further by automating a few of these processes. What if we were able to automatically add an inventory item to our quote and then had the ability to attach that quote to an email? Well, time's running out, but let's leverage FileMaker scripting and calculation capabilities and see what we can accomplish. Okay, so I'm going to close out this file, and we're going to do one more jump into a second file, just for the interest of time. So let me open up my hosts, this machine here, and we're going to open up this quote tool C. Okay, again, we'll enter our credentials here. Oops. Okay, so again, just some quick formatting things that I've done for this particular file. I just added some different formatting for the total cost. I just have added different color here on the item. Same thing with the inventory list here as well. Added some different coloring and got rid of the default white background there. So just some minor changes here. I've also added a quote email layout. Again, using the same techniques that we already discussed with pulling fields for, information from fields and having a portal here displaying information. This is what we're going to email out to the customer later on. But again, just to save some time, I've already went ahead and built that layout, but you already know all the techniques to create something similar to that. All right, back to our main file. Now, one of the ways that we can really improve this custom map is by automating this process where instead of looking at the inventory list and manually entering that information into a quote, we'd have the ability to just maybe click on a button and have it magically appear in the quote for us. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to that inventory card layout, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and jump back into layout mode, and I'm going to get rid of that ID, and I'm going to create a little button on our layout, okay? Again, we already know what you can do with a button. Here in this case, I'll just have a plus sign, and I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new script. Now, if you're not familiar with the concept of scripts, really it's just like a set of instructions that fire off in a sequence that produce a result. So for example, if you wanted to run a report, you would tell FileMaker, go to a specific layout, find specific records, and save these records as a PDF, for example, right? In this scenario, what we want to do is, again, we want to automatically have an inventory item appear on our quote. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to capture exactly what that inventory item is that we're selecting. Now, we're not going to hard code what that inventory item is. So what we're going to do, when you need to capture a dynamic value, you're going to use this set variable script step. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll say this variable is the inventory ID. And the value is from this inventories list table, it's going to be that primary key inventory ID, okay? And then I'm going to tell FileMaker, go ahead and close the window, okay? So that's going to close out this inventory list card window that I have, all right? Then I'll be at my quotes layout. So I'm going to tell FileMaker, go ahead and create another variable, and I want you to capture the quote that I'm currently looking at, okay? So that's going to be from the quotes table, it's going to be the primary key, all right? And then I'm going to tell FileMaker, go ahead, and since we're creating a brand new line item, remember the line item is in that quote items table. I'm going to tell FileMaker, go ahead and jump over to the order items table, okay? All right, and create a brand new record, all right? And in that record, I want you to use the value that I captured in that inventory item field, okay? So we'll say the foreign key inventory, use this value in the inventory ID variable that we captured to build a relationship to the inventory table, okay? So give us the appropriate inventory item that the user is requesting. And then I also want you to use the value that I captured in that quote ID field to complete a relationship to that quote table, okay? So we associate it to the appropriate quote, all right? So we'll go ahead and then finally we'll say go to back to the quotes table layout. All right, and then we'll say go ahead and find the particular quote that we were working on. Okay, so say primary key equals the quote value that we captured. Click OK there. All right, so you select add item there, and let's just do some quick formatting on this. I'm going to go ahead and tell FileMaker, go ahead and hide that there. All right, so we'll exit that layout. I'm going to jump back into the quotes table. All right, if I invoke the inventory list that we have, let's say this guy wants some disc calipers, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And there we go. Oh, I already had disc calipers, so I'm going to add that again. Let's say he wants 9 of those. All right, so you can see that it dynamically changes. Let's see what he doesn't have. Disc caliper. Let's say that, okay, we'll add the electric car battery. So we'll add that. There's the electric car battery automatically there. We'll say he wants 4 of these for his shop, and automatically it just appears. What does it look like on iOS? Let's jump back into our FileMaker Go. All right, and over into our host quote tool C file that we're currently working in. Again, we'll log into that, and just like you would expect, it's going to work just like on the desktop. Okay, so if I open up my inventory list, let's say that he wants an alternator, okay, for his store. We can see that the alternator is listed there. We'll add 9 of these for the store as well. All right, back into our desktop, and now that we've created a way to automate that process of building our quotes much more efficient, we'd love to have the ability to send an email of this quote to the customer as well. So what we would want to do is we would want to capture what quote we're working on. Then we want to jump over to our quote email layout, find a particular quote, send that quote out and attach it via an email, and then jump back over to the quote that we were working on. Okay, so again, let's jump back into layout mode, and in a way to invoke that script, I'm going to go ahead and add a brand new icon to my button navigation bar here, and here we'll use this icon right there. Okay, and we'll go ahead and create another new script. Okay, and we'll call this, I'll just call it send quotes. All right. Now, like we talked about, we want to capture first the quote that we are actually working on. So again, since it's something dynamic, we're going to use that set variable script step, and we're going to say quote ID here. The value is going to be the primary key. Click OK. OK. And then we're going to go to that email layout that we talked about, all right, that has the invoice structured for us, all right, and then we'll just perform a find for the appropriate quotes within that that layout. So we'll say quotes ID, all right, add that, click OK. Next thing we need to do is give that invoice ID that we're going to be saving. We're going to be saving it as a PDF, and we want to create a name for that PDF. Okay, so that when that PDF is created, we're going to attribute it a name. Okay, so again, that's going to dynamically change as well. So I'm going to use the set variable script step, and I'm going to go ahead and we're just going to call this file name. Okay, so I'm going to tell essentially FileMaker that when I save as a PDF that invoice, I want it to use this file name to name that PDF, okay? So what is that going to look like? Well, I'm going to have some literal text here. I'm just going to say it's going to be quotes for invoice, and then I'm going to say grab the invoice ID number, okay? So quote for invoice like 1 or 2 or 493, whatever it would be, okay? And then add a PDF extension at the end. Okay, so quote for invoice like one .pdf. Okay, again, whatever makes sense for your business use case, but in this scenario, we'll just use this as the file name. Okay, so now that we have a file name that we want to use, we actually want to save that PDF that we just found. Okay, so I'm going to use the save as PDF script step. Okay, we'll say dialog off, and then I'm going to go ahead and tell FileMaker that for the specify output file, it's just going to be that file name that we just talked about, or we just created. All right. Now, the next thing we need to do is that after the PDF file is created, we need to capture the location of where that PDF is created so that we can then point FileMaker to where that PDF is so it can attach it to our email. Okay, so I'm going to tell FileMaker that, all right, once you've saved those records as a PDF, let's go ahead and capture that PDF path. Okay, so I'm just going to call this PDF path. Again, that naming in the variable here is arbitrary, but it just stands out for me, the PDF path. Okay, I'm going to tell FileMaker use the get documents path location, as well as the file name. Okay, variable. So it's going to say, okay, go to that location and grab that particular file that we just created. All right, and you could take it a step further. You can specify, like on a Mac or Windows, for example, a specific folder that you want this to go to. On an iOS device, you don't really have control over where you can export or save files. So we're just going to use the get documents path here. But again, just as a tip or trick, if you wanted to, you could have a little bit more autonomy over where these files go. But again, in this scenario, we'll just use the get documents path. Okay. All right. So once we've captured that location, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump back to our original layout. Okay. Because we always want to end up where we originally were. All right. We'll do again a search for the particular quote that we were working with. So do that. New quote equals quote ID. All right. Okay. And then after we've performed a find for the quote that we were on, then let's go ahead and send that email out. Okay, so we'll say go ahead and send it to. Again, we don't want to hard code the email values here. We can just tell FileMaker go ahead and pull whatever the value is in that customer email field to save some time. For the subject, you could have, again, a field that has some values in here. You can use leverage, a calculation. I'm just going to add some literal text and say FileMaker auto parts follow-up quote. Let's see that here, follow-up quote. All right. The message, again, I'll just add some literal text that just says thank you for your business. All right. And then we attach files. We're just going to say the PDF path. Okay, so we're telling FileMaker, hey, we already told you, or we already captured where that PDF file was going to be saved, and the name of that file. Go ahead and grab that and attach it to this particular email. So we'll go ahead and click OK there. We'll click OK there. All right, and we'll go ahead and exit that layout. All right, so the changes are saved. Let's jump over to our FileMaker Go. All right, and there is the icons that we just created with the email. We'll make this a little bit bigger. We'll see what happens on my FileMaker Go. I'll tap on, I'll tap on the email icon. All right, so we get an email that pops up. In the to section, we have the email value automatically populated for us. We have the literal text in the subject line, FileMaker AutoParts, follow-up quote. In the body section, thank you for your business. There's that quote for invoice1.pdf file, just like we expected. Okay, so we use scripts and calculations to automatically build quotes and send a copy of that quote to the customer. And by building quotes in real time and having that data stored centrally, we've eliminated the time spent on double entry and fixing errors. And that direct quote has helped with better customer management, which means more money for our company. So I'd say we achieved what we set out to do, filling the mobile gap in our ecosystem. And we provided, again, real-time access across the devices of our team that they wanted to use, as well as providing them with a custom app that guided them to a better way to work. So where do you go from here? Well, for further information on FileMaker Go, check out the FileMaker Go 17 development guide filled with best practices on design, development, and deployment. Also, if you use mobile device management software to distribute apps and devices in your company, did you know that you can turn your FileMaker custom app into a native iOS app for easier distribution? Well, you can. And now, I know some of you are jumping a few steps ahead of me. Let's pull back for a second, but this tool was designed for distribution with mobile device management applications and not for commercial release. The iOS SDK does not handle important areas like app versioning, for example, but you can read more about that on the link. But again, if you're deploying or you're using mobile device management software, the iOS SDK kit is a fantastic resource for distributing to your team. For WebDirect, the WebDirect development guide is chock full of important information, just like that FileMaker Go development guide, covering best practices and tips for design and deployment. So it's a must read, in my opinion, before deploying via this technology. And if you need assistance developing your custom app, again, a very important part of your mobile strategy, then check out the FileMaker Custom App Academy, which is a free online video tutorial for building out your first custom app, or the free FileMaker community forums where you can interact with a largely active developer community. You can ask as many questions as you want or start as many threads as needed. Don't forget, you can also secure some one-on-one time with the developer if it makes sense to have someone come in and assist you or help you build out your file. Just reach out to your designated FileMaker sales rep or check out the Find a Partner section on FileMaker's website to start that process. All right, let's jump into your questions. And if you haven't entered your question yet, no worries. Just go to the GoToWebinar control panel, click on that question section, enter your question, and click on send. And we are past the hour, but I want to fit in a few of your questions. Thanks to those of you who are sticking around. We do have quite a queue building up here. First question we'll get to. What happens if a client does not have FileMaker server? Is there a way to sync data from an app created for FileMaker Go with a master database in FileMaker Pro? Okay, a good question, and there are some variations of this question in our queue. Essentially, is there a way to essentially host your files without FileMaker server? And this one is giving us a little variation in terms of is there a way to sync? So let's split those up in terms of can we host without FileMaker server, and then what can we do about syncing, okay? So to start off, can you host without FileMaker server? You can. So you can have a copy of that FileMaker Pro Advanced in 17, hosting your FileMaker custom app, and then you can have any combination of FileMaker Pro Advanced for desktop or FileMaker Go connecting to that custom app up to 5, okay? Now, let me stop you there for a second, okay? In a lot of my conversations, people say, okay, Ryan, does that mean I don't need FileMaker server? Well, anytime you have a production environment, regardless if you have one user all the way up to hundreds of users, FileMaker server definitely should be the host for your custom apps, right? It handles the IT side of things that we typically don't think of, from day one when we're deploying, or we're really just kind of focused on building out this custom app and solving some business problems. But we don't think about the things we have to do in terms of maintaining and securing that custom app as well. Those are things that FileMaker server will take advantage of. But back to the original question, yeah, FileMaker Pro Advanced can have it, again, up to 5 users for FileMaker Pro Advanced 17 or FileMaker Go. And it is for your non-mission critical environments. Again, it doesn't have the security of connections from client to host, so you wouldn't want to do it in production, because any kind of network sniffer could see the information that's being pulled back and forth when you're outside of the office. You can't see who is connecting to your hosted file. If you have FileMaker Pro Advanced as the host, again, you have to make sure that that particular custom app is open. The FileMaker Pro Advanced is physically open on your machine. What that means is if you close out that custom app, or if you close out FileMaker Pro Advanced, no one is going to be able to have access to it. If you have FileMaker Pro Advanced, you're most likely going to be installing it on like a desktop computer or a laptop computer, which means it's on consumer grade hardware, which has less of a shelf life than your server grade, which is something that you should have for your environment. It doesn't come up with its own backups, and you may be thinking, okay, Ryan, I have my own backups. I have a third-party backup software. I could use Snapshot backup software. Well, you don't want to use those technologies on live databases, because it could damage or corrupt them, right? Even your snapshots, right? The FileMaker server, it has built-in methodologies where what it does is, if you do a full backup, it will back up all the information that wasn't touched. Then it will pause the databases, back up that newly changed information, and then resume the databases. And it happens really quickly, right? But the point is, it's an extremely safe way to back up your live files. Otherwise, a third-party backup software, it doesn't care if someone is making changes or running a script in your FileMaker custom app. It just performs the backup right on those live files. Same thing with a snapshot. If you're running a report, the snapshot is not going to wait for that report to be finished and then stop your databases. It's just going to take that snapshot, right? So it doesn't set you up for the best success. On top of that, in the new FileMaker 17 licensing, if you purchase a user licensing package, that actually comes with 3 servers now. That's not the way it was in previous versions. But now, again, under that user licensing model, you'll get 3 servers. So you can have one in production. You can have a server in development or your staging. And then you can even take another server if you want it up to FileMaker Cloud, right? So in terms of going with a peer-to-peer environment where you have Pro Advanced, because that's, quote unquote, for a test environment, that's not necessarily the most ideal test environment, because now with user licensing, you can test with a FileMaker server, because you get those additional server licenses pretty much at the same cost as what we were giving out before for our FileMaker licensing for Teams. So if you want to go with a staging or development environment, which you should, which is a great practice to do so, really you should look at the user licensing model over just going with a FileMaker Pro Advanced. All right, the next question is adding the fields upon table creation a FileMaker 17 thing? Yes, that was introduced in FileMaker 17. Again, you get, or we will automatically create the primary key for you, who created the record, when it was created, who modified the record, when it was modified. So those are right off the bat. In every table that you create, you don't have to worry about that. Certainly, again, that we talked about, you can create your own, but that's what we will automatically create for you in any table, not just the first table in a file, but any table in the file. All right, the next question. Does anything warn a FileMaker Go user that they have lost internet connectivity and that they need to push data from device to server? Yeah, there will be prompts. There'll be a message that you need to reconnect. If you go to another record, for example, or if you try to run a report for something like that, it'll tell you that it needs to reconnect. But you also get that message just in general. Kind of taking that a step further, what happens if there's a network drop and you want to reconnect? In that file manage security area where you create accounts and you create privilege sets, there is an extended privilege called FM reauthenticate. I believe that's the name, reauthenticate. But that is what determines, especially for FileMaker Go users, if the connection is dropped, how long do you want FileMaker to attempt to reconnect that person? right? If it's FMReal authenticated for 10, for example, FileMaker will try for 10 minutes to reconnect that person and then put them where they were, right? If it's FMReal authenticate 0, for example, if the network drops and that person is out, and they'll have to log in to reaccess your FileMaker custom app. So just a quick tip there: when you're deploying for your mobile users, you want to you want to configure that particular privilege set for the different user groups for whatever makes sense for your business. Let's see, one or two more in the interest of time. Is there a version for Android? The WebDirect piece, the web browser piece, that is what you would use for non-iOS tablets or non-iOS phones. The FileMaker Go app, that is strictly for iOS devices, so like your iPhone or your iPad or your iPad Pro, you would use that. But again, for the non-iOS devices, you would use our WebDirect web browser. What about dynamic layouts? So FileMaker doesn't have responsive layouts. Like if you're in a web browser, for example, and you change the size of the window, and then objects would automatically resize or disappear. There are different things that we have. We have like anchoring on objects. So if you stretch a window, for example, depending on where the anchoring is, that object could stretch along with it. It will never minimize past the original size, but it could stretch with it. But what won't happen is if you design a layout for a desktop, it will automatically change and format itself to the size of a iPhone, for example, right? So what you want to do as a best practice is create different sets of layouts for the different technologies that custom app will be accessed by. So you'll have a layout set for desktop, a layout set for an iPad, a layout set for an iPhone. If you decide to go with a web, maybe you have another layout set for that, because it will probably be lighter than a desktop layout. And then you'll have some calculations, some scripting, so that when someone logs into your file, for example, you can capture how they're accessing the file, what kind of device it is, and then you'll put them into that layout path. And then through some additional scripting, when that person navigates to another layout, you'll make sure that they navigate to a different layout in that same technology path there as well. All right. That's all the time we have today. Thanks for sticking around past the hour. I wanted to get to as many questions as I could. On behalf of FileMaker, it was definitely my pleasure chatting with everyone today. I definitely hope that you learned something that you could incorporate into your own custom apps and deploy to your own mobile users. And with that, have a fantastic rest of your day, everyone. One final thing, DevCon, FileMaker DevCon is coming up in a few weeks. Hope to see some of you there as well. Have a fantastic rest of your day.